Hi there, this is Chuck with Pocket Snakes again. I'm adding the last 2 strands to take this whip from 28 to 32 because it goes up by 4. I've changed the camera angle a bit because getting down to where I can sit down and work on this. I'm going to give it a try to finish this up. Okay. Okay. And I'm just trying to complete this overlay, which is about another 16 inches or so. Basically, we're at about halfway down this whip. And it will change in diameter a little bit. And I might have to add another 4 strands, but let's hope that we don't have to do that. And hopefully the focus on this camera will do just fine because I'm bouncing around here. And I'm putting myself in the middle of stuff. And this is a squeaky chair, so I've got another chair to replace this one because this one's annoying. I mean, the ceiling fan up above is a little annoying too, but I have to have enough air movement to keep the camera from overheating. So anyway. So now we're at just plating normally with 32 strands. So there's like 16 strands on the left and 16 strands on the right. And it becomes a little more difficult to keep them all in their proper lane so they don't wander. And I inserted the 2 strands, so there's a doubled strand here because there's the normal strand which is connected here, and this one squirts all the way through. And on this side, this one's connected and this one scooches all the way through. And so And then right below the black strand up top is the other one that is just laid in there so we don't over tension those. And I needed to come the other way first. And I always leave my mistakes in, as I'm not in the whip, but in the videos, so as I go, you get to see the whole thing. I used to try and edit stuff, but at this point the files are so big in 4K that it's hard to do effective editing. Okay, so I can't pull on this because it's attached to the other side, so I'm just going to lay this one in. And then I'm going to snug it down gently and bring it around. And who knows, this may end up being a 36 when I'm done. The black one can be really pulled, but you have to be sure you're seating it below the white one that's just laid in. One nice thing with this pattern, on the left side it goes over the black strand, and on this side it goes under the black strand. One thing I have not figured out how to do is where you have the doubled strands, remove the doubled strands with an inverse build. It's fairly straightforward to do on a strand dropping build. Now if I pull on this one, I would be pulling it from this side. So I'm just going to lay this one in soft. Then I'm going to lay this one in. Just barely snug it. Then I'm going to go back to full tension to lock those down. So. I don't know about you, but when I hit about 32 plate, I start to have to think more, and strand management becomes more of an issue to make sure I'm picking up and placing each of the strands so everything slows down. So people wonder why higher plate counts cost more. Well, it takes more time and it takes more attention to detail, but it results in a prettier, finer braid. I did one whip out of basically flat thread at one point, and that one was close to 64 strands. So it was half the width of this material and half the, well, a fourth the thickness. It's like a material that you would use for bindery. I made a whole whip out of it, which was pretty crazy. And I don't have them on my website because I don't want to have to make them out of that material. So and I didn't get back to this whip until basically 10 or 11 o'clock the next day because I was trying to upload videos and it's still uploading while we're shooting this. Trying to post some new content, but the more intentional you are laying these strands, the better the end result is. And everything I do that's good takes quite a bit of time because I'm not after speed. I'm not trying to make a killing doing anything. I'm just doing what I love and trying to create art. Sometimes I'll do some fancy plating and it might take me 2 days to do fancy plating. And I don't dislike it, but there are days when I don't have the brain power or the focus to sit and do fancy plating. This is a real straight, dead simple whipmaker plate, under half, over half. So it doesn't take a lot of brain power, but it takes a lot of attention to detail. And you don't want to cross the strands and get them in the wrong plane because then you'll have a weird crossover or a weird bump, and I hate that. Starting to put more tension into this now. With 275 paracord, your fingers kind of burn instead of just, there's all that force is concentrated on a little 1/8 inch strand instead of a 1/4 inch strand. You can watch the strands tighten up. I'm trying to put about 40-45 pounds of tension on each of these. Might be putting too much, but trying to be consistent with how much tension and increase the tension towards the hilt. It just helps keep everything in its place. Hopefully the TV in the background won't make me regret working while people are watching television here. So, I really don't like background noise. As you can tell, there's no music on. Of course, music probably would get flagged anyway. I encourage anybody who wants to make whips to set and make one. You'll know pretty quick whether it's going to be for you if you're fascinated by it. And you'll know it's not for you if you're like frustrated beyond belief and just bored out of your skull or angry. Partway in, a little bit of frustration is normal, but I find it soothing. So it's kind of like most people get irritated at a fishing spool that comes apart in a snarl. And I look at it as a challenge to not have to cut the line and take the snag out. I've got this camera synced up on my left, and it's about 6 inches to the left of my face, but it's got a real wide angle lens. So I have to be a little careful when my moving stuff around that I don't bump the camera or knock the tripod over, because I've got the tripod very small right now. It's setting about shoulder height. Yeah, please like, subscribe, follow me, check my stuff out. If you have interest or questions, please leave me a comment. I'm happy to chat with you or even talk to you on the phone. Not much for texting back and forth. I can do it for a short while, but it's probably my worst form of communication is texting. I do better verbally than having to change the pictures in my head to be inadequate words to explain the thought that's in my head. A lot of my stuff is pretty unique because I don't think the same as everybody else, and it's a lot harder than people realize to try and elocute and bring to life or turn verbally an idea that's only in your head that nobody else has really spent the time to elocute. It's one of the bigger challenges in my life because I come up with a lot of new, fun, crazy ideas. I'm just trying to explain it to somebody else so that the picture shows up in their head at least at some level. It's just words are woefully inadequate. It's faster for me to braid a whip than to explain some of my ideas in words. And it's easier to prove if the concept works if you can bring it into reality by speaking words or just building a prototype. It's a whole lot easier to build a prototype than to try and explain a lot of times what I'm thinking or what I'm trying to say. I have infinite patience pretty much for people and for things that would frustrate most people, like having to get all the tension right on 32 strands of whip. Like I can sit and do this for days, but my body won't let me. Okay, I'm going to move the whip up a little bit. So I moved it 6 or 8 inches up. So now I've got a foot left, so I'm 2/3 of the way done. This is part 4 or 5, I forget which, of this little mini series. I didn't used to be patient with people, but once I realized that everybody's struggling with something in their life, made me realize that I should be kinder and more tolerant of people. I used to be frustrated with people all the time. Most of the time when they're irritated and unhappy, there has nothing to do with me, although I frustrate a lot of people. Where I do get frustrated is when I can't find the right words to accurately share the imagery in my head, because I think in pictures much more than in words. And I can see the picture so clearly I could paint it for you easier than I could turn it into mere words. You'll notice that the bottom 2 pairs that I just laid are always being pinned by a thumb. It's a slower way to braid, but it does help keep the tension consistent. I haven't figured out a better workaround. There's sloppier workarounds that do work, like not holding a thumb there and just tensioning each strand, but it's easier to get the strands crossed if you let the tension off. It's kind of like if you let the tension off of a fishing line, the fish might get away. And there's nothing quite as frustrating as that when you're fishing or losing the tension in the whip that you're braiding because you were trying to go too fast. And at one time I wanted better speed, and then I realized I just enjoy the whole process. I probably should actually turn this thing around, make sure I haven't crossed anything. I have not crossed anything. That's shocking. So I wasn't even looking at it yesterday. I braided it all the way up to 28 plate and didn't really inspect the backside except with my fingers. A lot of times my fingers are better eyes for me than my vision is. It's a whole lot easier for me to tell something's out of place with my fingertips because I've done so many hours of paying attention. I used to laugh at people, or laugh with people, and tell them that I could probably do this to a certain extent in the dark. I'd be less distracted without seeing. Probably less frustrated too. But I don't know how true that is exactly because I've never tried sitting and braiding for an entire overlay in the dark. And it would make for a boring video of black darkness with me sitting and talking about nonsensical things that don't matter to most people. I'm just glad you guys have chosen to listen to any of this. Hopefully